ballot. And the committee may remember this is, I think, similar, if not identical, to legislation which I believe may have passed out last year.
I believe this is similar to legislation we passed last year that I believe was vetoed by the governor, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and it does it still have a fiscal impact after it was amended?
Doug, I don't believe that a fiscal impact statement has been done for the substitute yet.
All right, so the appropriate motion for this would be to report and refer to appropriations if the committee is so inclined.
Second.
Motion and second to report and refer House Bill 1428 to the Committee on Appropriations. Chairman Delegate Sickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to remind the committee that when the registrars get this, they have no way, there's no national database of people to look up and see if it's the person with the picture is the same person who's applying for the absentee ballot. So that's probably why the governor will veto it again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. I will warn you on the new voting machine. Sometimes there's a delay, and when you push the button and when the vote actually shows up, just push the button once. If you hit it twice, you'll be turning your vote on and off. So just hit it once. All those in favor of reporting will vote yes. All right, has everybody voted?
I'm trying.
Okay, just record your vote with the clerk. All right, the clerk will close the roll. That bill is reported and referred to appropriations. All right, Delegate Ransom.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1912, Delegate Yost, we've added another criteria. It's a group of people that have been that has been granted a protective order to the list of those folks that can vote absentee. And he actually had a case within his district where a person was granted a protective order and did not feel comfortable going out to vote on election day. And subcommittee recommended reporting that 7-0, and I would so move.
There's a motion and a second to report House Bill 1912. Is there any discussion? All those in favor will vote yes. And if your vote doesn't get recorded, just see the clerk after the meeting to make sure your vote got recorded correctly. There it goes. All right. Clerk will close the roll. That bill is reported. I believe that does it for your subcommittee.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is campaigns. And Delegate Rush, do you have a...
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Subcommittee on campaigns met yesterday and had some recommendations. The first is House Bill 1430, Delegate Fowler. It's the registration of third-party groups that collect voter registration. For clarification, the first party is yourself. The second party is the registrar. So the third party is outside groups that go and get registered and try to register folks to vote. This bill does a couple things. It makes the groups register with the state board, gives them an individual identification number, and then folks that work for these groups then also have to take training and get an individual number so that the registrations can be traced back to individuals. It also prohibits the payment by signature for these groups, and it was recommended to report and send to appropriations, and I so moved.
There's a motion, is there a second to report and refer House Bill 1430? Yeah, did we adopt the substitute? All right, but first we need to adopt.
Yeah, I move the substitute.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All those in favor of adopting the substitute will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now the substitute's before us.
The recommendation, and I so move, would be to report and refer to appropriation.
All right, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to report and refer House Bill 1430 to appropriations. Is there any discussion, Don?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the patron, I think the most important lines in here are lines 38 through 41. I think that's a separate bill just has those, which I think is the key improvement in this language. I thought that these third-party groups already had to register, with the state when they're doing this, and how does this go beyond what the current law is with regard to having these third-party groups registered?
Commissioner Cortez, can you address the current requirements versus what would be required? I assume you've had a chance to look at the substitute.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
The microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Currently, organizations or individuals receiving more than 25 registration forms from either the department or the general registrars or electoral board offices must undergo mandatory training and sign an affidavit. This bill would keep that threshold, but it would require the department to establish a unique identifying number for those organizations and provide to them, and also for them to maintain certain records and provide those records to the department. I believe it's 5 days after the close of books related to their registration activities, and also at the request of the department within 3 business days. So there are some additional record-keeping requirements, but the threshold for who would be subject to the training requirements and interaction with the department is the same.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? And I would just like to add that I think the reason for this legislation is that most of the complaints regarding problems with voter registration seem to, not all, but most of them seem to come from some of these third-party groups. Now, there are third-party groups that do a wonderful job, but it seems like most of the issues that we have had in the past and most recently with fraudulent voter registration forms being submitted involve these some of these third-party groups, and so this is I guess an attempt to try to address some of those issues. All right, all those in favor of reporting and referring House Bill 1430 to appropriations will vote yes. Clerk will close the roll. The bill is reported and referred to appropriations. Delegate Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1431, Delegate Cole, in its original form was identical to 1430. We did have a substitute, and I'll move the substitute.
All right, there's a motion to adopt the substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the substitute is before us.
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation of the subcommittee was to report the substitute, and the substitute is much narrower than the Fowler bill. It only prohibits the payment per registration. It keeps all the other language the same for these third-party groups. It was a recommendation of the subcommittee to report, and I so move.
For a second?
Second.
Motion and second to report House Bill 1431. Delegate Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to confirm something. You may be able to tell me, or staff attorney might be able to tell me. I just want to make sure in this bill that you can still compensate and pay people to collect applications. It just simply bans it for pay or bonuses from the amount of applications.
That's correct. You can still employ people to register voters. You just cannot do it on a per application basis. Delegate Sickles.
Mr. Chairman, just a remark on this bill. I think this is needed and would stop all I think it's probably all that's really needed, even though I voted for the earlier bill. All that extra bureaucracy is probably not needed. That this is the source of the problem with these groups, and so I strongly support this. And when the other bill gets appropriations, we'll see if the committee wants to pay for all that other stuff that's in the earlier bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of reporting House Bill 1431 will vote yes. Your finger. All right, there we go. Clerk will close the roll. That bill is reported. All right, Delegate Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we have House Bill 1696, Delegate Marshall. It deals with filling the vacancies in the United States Senate. The bill really makes two substantive changes. First, it removes the language limiting when the special election can be held, meaning the governor will issue the writ. He has the discretion to set the date, but he has to follow whatever state and federal law is. Secondly, the bill removes the authority of the governor to make a temporary appointment, putting it back in the hands of the citizens of Virginia. The recommendation of the subcommittee was to report, and I so move.
Motion to report 1696. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. The bill is before us, and just to kind of state simply what it does, current law is that if a U.S. Senator resigns or dies in office, the governor makes the appointment, until a special election can be held, or?
That's correct. This past, last few months, we've had many elections to replace members of the House, Virginia House and Virginia Senate. And the citizens of their district chooses who is going to replace them. If a member of Congress was to resign for whatever reason, and that is vacant, then the citizens of that congressional district would elect. Here is that 1696, what it does, it lets the citizens of Virginia decide as opposed to one person deciding.
All right, is there any discussion on the legislation? Motion to report. All those in favor of reporting will vote yes. Clerk will close the roll. The bill is reported. Delegate Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is House Bill 1698, and it deals with polling places. The bill directs that the Attorney General will develop a template for a memorandum of understandings for general registrars and the folks who own the polling places. It sets forth hours, times, parking spaces, amount of space used, and the length of time for the memorandum of understanding to be enforced. It was recommended to report with a line amendment. I will say that I voted against this bill, so we'll make the motion to report with the line amendment.
All right, well, first we need to adopt the amendment.
Do the line amendment, sir?
All right, there's a motion to adopt the amendments. There's four amendments, line amendments. Motion and second to adopt the amendments. Is there any discussion on the amendments? All those in favor of adopting the amendments will say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the amended bill is before us.
Amended bill, thank you, sir, Mr. Chairman. It was recommended 4-2 to report, and I so move.
Motion to report, is there a second? All right, Delegate Marshall, is there anything you want to add?
The only thing is, and this is permissive, so it's not requiring the localities to do so. It's requiring the Attorney General to come up with a template so that if that template could be used in any one of the jurisdiction. I didn't want to have an unfunded mandate to the locality, so that made a mandate across the street over here. So in my area, there are no memorandum of understanding, contracts and whatnot between the polling places and the registrar. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what their obligations were.
Okay, Delegate Sickles.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask the patron, was there any organized group that opposed this? Just my opinion.
I don't know about organized, but there was uninformed people.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Rush.
There was some opposition at the subcommittee from registrars, and at the appropriate time, I make a comment about why I voted.
That's appropriate time.
Okay. There was opposition from registrars, and also my concern is that the Attorney General has this template, and then it's not mandatory, so each locality could develop their own. So now we're letting attorneys for each locality could have something that was different from the Attorney General. So I could see in a polling place that may be in a hotly contested election that someone could go to a federal judge and say, we need to keep this polling place open because they did not follow this Attorney General memorandum of understanding. I think it opens it up for a lot of lawyers to try to nitpick these polling places, and I thought it could be a slippery slope for them.
Delegate Landers.
Sure, can I ask the patron a question?
Sure, if I could correct one thing, Delegate Rush, if you remember, the lady from the election board of Richmond came in, and with the amendments that we made, it made it permissive. She was okay with it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that did not change my mind, because I still think that with this being permissive, you're opening up Henrico County or Montgomery County attorneys to do the same thing. It may differ, and then it could throw something into a court system to try to figure out which one would be right.
All right, Delegate Landers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Marshall, what is the problem we're trying to fix?
The problem that we're trying to fix is on a Monday, right before the November election at 5 o'clock, one of the polling places called the person who called me and had a problem with, they were in a volunteer fire department, and they were not going to allow them the same number of parking spots, the lights were not as bright as it was, et cetera, et cetera. So after the election, I talked to a couple of my registrars and asked them, do they have any type of agreement between in the areas where they're voting? In the city of Danville, in Pennsylvania County, they do not. So in my area, I'm sure, like in yours, we use schools, we use fire departments in the county. We even have one convenience store that they use for a public place. So what this does is it's permissive. I was going to direct the Attorney General to do this MOU, so they just kind of fill in the blanks. I didn't want to do unfunded mandate to localities, but just trying to do a business approach to this so that so they'll know what they do.
Delegate Marshall, couldn't they just pick up the phone with the volunteer fire department and solve that problem?
Well, they could, but the problem is, say, in Dr. Landis in Pennsylvania County, the former registrar had retired. So she was the one who came up with the verbal agreement between the two, but then she's out the door and is on retirement, so the new person doesn't know what that retirement is. So, you know, as a business guy, I kind of like things on paper, so everybody knows what their, what their requirements are.
Any other discussion? All right, there's a motion to report the amended House Bill 1698. All those in favor will vote yes.
So we have more uninformed, so.
Has everyone voted? All right, clerk will close the roll. The bill fails to report.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, no other business before the committee today. The committee will rise.